Hi guys, welcome back to our introduction to practical Python coding in eHealth tutorial for beginners, where we learn about Python coding for digital health or health informatics use. So in this tutorial, we're going to talk about if-else statements in Python. Alright, so I'm gonna name my notebook if-else. Alright, so in Python, there's a data type called a Boolean data type. So what that means is that the Boolean data type can hold values of true or false. And this is helpful when you want to run pieces of code based on the condition of something. So as long as if you give an expression that evaluates to true or false, um, you can put it inside an if and else. So let me show you an example. So comparing two numbers is an example that will result in either true or false. So if I say, 5 is greater than 3, right? So that will give you true. Shift enter, that's true. And the result we see here is a Boolean data type. It's a true data type. Now, no, this is not a string, so you don't see quotes next to the word true. This is a data type in itself, true. If I say 5 is less than 3, shift enter to run, and it tells me that it's false. Okay, so if I say I can put other comparison operators too. So if I want 5 is greater than or equal to 3, like so, shift enter, and that's true. And I can say, if 5 is equal to 3. So note that if I want to evaluate if two integers are equal, I put equals sign, two double equals. Otherwise, the single equals is an assignment operator. The double equals is a comparison operator. I want to compare if the left is equal to right. That should give me a Boolean value of false. All right. And you can do things like this. So you can say, if is true the same as true? Is true equal to true? Well, that's true. And is true equal to false? So note when I spell true, it's always capital T. And when I spell false, it's always capital F. And the rest of the false is lowercase. So you always have to do that in Python. It's case sensitive. All right, it's false. And notice when I put true and false, I get a different color. And it's also bolded. So that means that these are reserved words within Python, and that you cannot use, true or false as variable names. Okay, I can make comparisons with, and or. So if I say 5 greater than 3, that's true, and 5 is less than 3. So I have here an AND operator. So when you have an AND operator, it means that both statements on the left and the right side has to be true for the AND to evaluate to true. So in this case, I have 5 greater than 3, so this side is true. However, on the right side, I have 5 less than 3, which evaluates to false. And this entire AND statement should evaluate to false because one of the side is false. All right. Okay. And I can also try directly true and false. So once again, so for the AND operator to evaluate to true, the only way to do that is that both sides have to be true. But in here, this case, one of the side is false, so the whole result is false. I also have an OR operator. So if I have 5 greater than 3 or 5 less than 3. When you have an OR operator, it means that if either side is true, or if either side is true, then the whole expression will evaluate to true. So in this case, I'm on my left side, 5 greater than 3, that's true. Even though this is on the right side, 5 less than 3 is false, I have at least one side that's true. This will give me true. And as you see here, right? Equally, if I have true or false, if I have at least one side um, next to or is true, then the entire expression, the or expression or the operation will evaluate to true. So I expect this statement to evaluate to true. Shift enter, and there you go, I get true back. Okay, so let's put our knowledge to use. Recalling a previous tutorial, we calculate the body mass index of a person. So the way the body mass index is used is to determine if a person is obese, or normal weight or underweight, based on their weight and height. So let's define a function called lookup underscore BMI. And we're gonna pass in BMI as a parameter. So normally when we write functions, for values we do not know yet, when we code the Python program, we want to use a variable or parameter or a variable to hold the value of that, so that when the Python code is run, um, this variable will take on the value of whatever you give it. Okay, so I have a BMI here, and I expect that BMI to be, a number. So I can say if BMI less than, and there's a lookup table for this. So, and I've already looked at it. So it's if BMI is less than 18.5. So again, so it will have an if statement, and we have round brackets to hold the Boolean expression. So this will evaluate to either true or false. So if this is true, I put a colon here, then I will return, excuse me, return underweight. Shift. Okay, so if the BMI is less than 18.5, then the person is underweight. Okay, so but there are other conditions too. So I use the else if. So this else if will run if the first statement evaluates to false. So in other words, if the BMI is not less than 18.5, it'll come here. So now if I have a BMI greater than or equal to 18.5, and BMI is less than or equal to 25. All right, I'm gonna put a colon here and return normal. So this is a normal BMI. I can follow the same pattern. So elif BMI is greater than 25 and BMI less than equal to 30, colon. So this indicate that this person is overweight. Okay. And finally, I want to catch if a person is greater than 30. So we can just put else. So the else block will run if none of the above runs. So in Python, if we have an if and else block, it'll go in order. So it'll check the first one and check the next one and then check the next one until it evaluates to true. And if none of the Boolean expressions evaluate to true, the very last else block will run. So else turn obese. So in this case, the else block will run if the BMI is greater than 30. All right, so that's our function. I'm going to put shift enter. I'm going to call this function look up underscore BMI. And I'm just gonna put in, say, 17. So if I put in 17 here, this will take the value, BMI will take the value of 17 and then come here. So if BMI is less than 18.5, yes it is. So this should give me back underweight. So I'm gonna go ahead and try this. Shift enter, and that's underweight. Okay, so let's try a value between 18.5 and 25. So let's try 20. So look up underscore BMI 20. So this because 20 is not less than 18.5, it'll ignore this statement. This statement will not be run, and it'll come here, and this statement will evaluate to true, and therefore this statement will run. So it'll return normal. So I should get normal back when I do this. Shift enter. So here I have normal. Okay, and similarly, if I put a value between 25 and 30, I should get overweight. So look up BMI, score BMI, 27, shift enter. That's overweight. Okay, and then finally, a value beyond 30 should give me obese. So look up BMI 32, obese. Okay, so let's try applying some of the knowledge we learned in previous tutorials together. So let's try to actually calculate the BMI from weight and height, and then look up if a BMI is indicative of underweight or so on. Okay, let's define a function called calculate, score BMI, weight and height, colon. So BMI is equal to weight divided by height squared. Okay, and then we're going to return BMI. Okay, so shift enter to put this to define this function into my Python program, and I can say, BMI is equal to calculate BMI. Say if I have 50 and 1.7, or doesn't really matter. Okay, and then let's print that value out so we can see the result. Shift enter. 17.3 as we'd expect. And now we can actually look up that BMI, and we can actually just put in BMI. So in this case, this BMI is actually the same as this BMI here that I'm using. So when we printed this BMI, it's giving me 17.3. So Python program will replace this value as 17.3 when it looks up BMI for me. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Shift enter. Get underweight. So that's what we are expecting. So BMI is less than 18.5, we get underweight. Let's say we BMI equals to calculate BMI. Let's say I have 55 and 1.7, right? So let's check what that BMI is and look up BMI for this BMI. So this is just doing everything, all the calculations together. So when you're actually developing a digital health app, a piece of your code could look like this. You're calculating the BMI of a person's given a person's weight and height, and then finally you're gonna look up the same BMI and then get a result from it. So let's shift enter, run this. So what this means is that this BMI was calculated to be 19.03. And when you look up this BMI, 19.03, you get normal. So this person has a normal body mass index. Okay, so next we're gonna show, how if else can be used in a workflow. For example, in a standard operating procedure, where a decision needs to be made based on the condition of blood sugar levels. For example, in the course of medical intervention, you may want to decide on something based on the blood sugar level of patient. So let's try to define a function, define blood sugar status. Okay, so I want this function to have the value of blood sugar level. Okay, and I want to know if this person is fasting when the blood sugar level is acquired. All right, so based on if a patient's fasting or not, we expect different blood sugar levels. And so that makes a perfect case to use if else because there are conditions associated with decision making. So if a person is fasting, okay, colon here. All right, if the person is fasting, and so right now I'm writing a piece of code that will run if the person is fasting. Okay, so if notice how I indented from here to here when I want a piece of code to be inside another piece of code. Okay, so if blood sugar level is less than or equal to 5.6, then I will return. Oops. Okay, blood sugar level is normal during fasting. Oops, not faster, fasting. Okay, so this block of code will run if the person is fasting, and inside if it's fasting, then if the blood sugar is less than or equal to 5.6, the blood sugar level is normal during fasting. Uh, okay, else if blood sugar level is greater than 5.6 and blood sugar level is less than 7. So between 5.6 and 7, then return blood sugar level is somewhat high during fasting. Okay, and finally, return blood sugar level is very high during fasting. Patient is diabetic. Okay, so what happened here is that if I get a blood sugar level between 5.6 and 7 during fasting, then I'll say, this is somewhat high. Otherwise, the blood sugar level is extremely high, greater than 7, then patient is diabetic. Okay, so here, notice we assume that the blood sugar level is not too low below 5.6, that we don't care about this case yet. Okay, so, okay, so I'm gonna come out of this else and notice my indentation now aligns with this if. So now I'm appending to this if an else statement. Else return, we'll just say please measure your blood sugar at least 2 hours after a meal. Okay, so we're not gonna care if they measured their blood sugar right after a meal. So we can't really tell. We cannot really make a decision if they are diabetic or if the blood sugar level is high. Okay, so I'm gonna run this piece of code, shift return, to define that the blood sugar status function in my Python program. And let's try to call it. So we'll say blood underscore sugar underscore status. Okay, let's say a person is 5.6 and is fasting is true. Shift enter. So that should give me blood sugar level is normal during fasting. Yeah, exactly. Because its fasting is true. So if its fasting is true, it'll come here. And then since I have 5.6 here, this block of code will run and it'll return normal. Okay, let's try if the same thing here, except let's just try 6. So 6 is between 5.6 and 7. So I expect this piece of code to run since its fasting is also true here. So shift enter. Blood sugar level is somewhat high during fasting. Okay, so we have, and let's try 6 with a false. So let's see. Okay, so if its fasting is false, regardless of the blood sugar level, it should always say, please measure your blood sugar at least 2 hours after meal. Okay, so I'm going to shift enter and run this. There we go. Please measure your blood sugar at least 2 hours after a meal. Okay, great. So in this tutorial, we've looked at if-else statements and Boolean expressions. We used if and else statements when we want to make a decision about something based on the condition of something else. And we look at how Booleans in Python will allow us to evaluate statements to true or false and enable us to make decisions based on true or false values. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial, and thanks for watching.